a bit dark in here. That's much better. Hello, Muggles, witches, wizards. Welcome to Black Cat Kitchen. Today we have a very special episode for you. We're going to be recreating culinary creations from Harry Potter. Today we're making a delicious butterbeer, one for the adults and one for the kids, and an amazing pumpkin pasty. So do your best Molly Weasley impression and get in the kitchen.
2 pumpkin pasties, please.
Here's what you'll need for the pumpkin pasties. For a full list of ingredients and measurements, please check out the description below. We're going to start by making the pastry for the pasties. You can certainly buy a store-bought pastry if you'd like, but this is a really simple recipe and I'd love to show you how to make it. We'll start by adding our flour and our salt to our big mixing bowl. Now I'm using vegetable shortening in this recipe. You can certainly use butter, but if you are using butter, make sure it's cold, almost frozen, and grated into the pastry so that it creates those nice little airy pockets that we want. So we're going to combine this with our fingers into the flour, and you want it to be a sandy pea-like texture, so just get in there. It's much easier just to do it with your hands. If you're quite averse to this, you can use a pastry blender or 2 knives, but I always find that if you get in there, you can really get the texture of the pastry. And if you find it's still a little bit dry, which it probably should be at this point, you'll want to add just a little bit of water. Aguamenti. Get yourself a bit of cling film and pop your pastry just in the middle. I like to spread it down at this point, almost into a bit of a rectangle because that's how we'll be rolling it later. Cover it up, and we're just gonna pop that in the fridge for about 20 minutes just to set up a little bit. While that's chilling, let's get started on the butterscotch sauce. If you're planning on making your own butterscotch sauce, these are the ingredients you'll need. Now you're more than welcome to buy a good quality butterscotch sauce from the shops. It's always better to make it yourself. Let's start by adding our brown sugar, our butter, and our golden syrup to the pot. We're going to turn the heat on quite low, low-medium, just until it starts to melt, and we want to bring it up to a boil, at which point we'll put in a candy thermometer so we can monitor the temperature. If golden syrup isn't available to you, you're more than welcome to use a corn syrup. A lighter variety is better in this case. When it gets to this stage, you can give it a little stir. Just get all of that brown sugar moistened. Now that that's all incorporated, let's get our candy thermometer in there. We want it to come up to soft ball stage, about 240 degrees Fahrenheit or just over 115 degrees Celsius. As the bubbles start to come up, you'll just want to gently stir it every now and again, not too much, just so that it doesn't stick to the bottom. Once it reaches 240, you want to take it off the heat and let it cool for about 5 minutes before we add the rest of our ingredients. Once it's cooled down just a little bit, you're going to add the cream in. You'll want to stir until the cream is completely combined and it's all one uniform color, and then we can add the rest of our flavorings. Look how lovely and dark that is. That's because I've used a really dark brown sugar. So to this, we're going to add some salt and some apple cider vinegar, and I know that sounds bizarre, but because it's quite a sweet sauce and we're adding it to something else that's very sweet, you'll want that apple cider vinegar to really cut the sweetness. We're also going to add a free pour of vanilla. Get that all combined and set it aside to cool. Now that the butterscotch sauce, you should include that.
Oh.
Now that the butterscotch sauce is cooling, we can get started on our pumpkin filling. Into the bowl goes our pumpkin. You can use canned pumpkin here, or you can also use pumpkin that you've roasted and pureed yourself. Save a little bit to the side because you'll need some for your butterbeer later. To the pumpkin, we'll add brown sugar, white granulated sugar, and a mixture of spices. If you have pumpkin spice, you can use that. This is just cinnamon, ginger, and clove, and I'm going to freshly grate some nutmeg. Give this a whisk. Bring it all together. It's going to be quite thick, and that's exactly what we want for a hand pie. You don't want a runny filling. That would even be nice in your morning oatmeal. Let's get our oven preheated to 200 degrees centigrade or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And let's roll out our pastry. We're going to liberally flour our surface that we'll be rolling on. And then to start, we'll use about half of our pastry. Flour on top of the pastry as well. You really don't want this sticking. I'm going to roll this to about 1/8 of an inch thick. And whenever I'm rolling pastry, I like to just give it a little bit of a turn after every couple of rolls, just to make sure it's not sticking, to see if I need to add any more flour underneath. Because I've used vegetable shortening in this is a vegetarian recipe, so if you are a vegetarian, you are able to have this, and actually vegan, until you add the butterscotch sauce on top, but that's completely optional. We're going to use a 4-inch ring cutter, about 10 centimeters, and we'll transfer those over to our prepared baking tray. You can roll this dough out a couple of times to get as many circles as you need. This dough freezes beautifully, so if you don't use it all, make sure that you pop it in the freezer and you can use it for another special treat. You're going to take about a tablespoon of your pumpkin filling and put it in the middle of each one of your dough circles. Just a little bit more. You don't want to overfill them because they can explode in the oven, so just be cautious that you're only using just about a tablespoon will do. And this is what happens when you overfill it. So I've gone back and removed some of the filling and all of them to about 1.5 teaspoons, maybe 2 teaspoons at the most. So we're going to moisten the edge of the pastry, just one side of it, with some water. And just very gently fold the pastry over. If your pastry is too thick here, it could potentially crack. So you want to be really gentle and make sure you're getting a good seal around the edges. I'm going to whisk up an egg to make an egg wash to make sure the pastry gets nice and brown. We need to make some slits in the top of the hand pies, just to let that air out. So I'm just going to make 3 little pretty fan cuts. They look quite nice and they're very traditional to a regular pasty. Those will take about 20 minutes in the oven, which gives us just enough time to make our butterbeer.
Got a little bit.
Here's what you'll need to make both the kids and adults version of the butterbeer. So for the topping, we're going to mix some marshmallow fluff. Should have used a spoon for this. I will switch to a spoon. If you've never had marshmallow fluff before, it is extremely sweet, but you're only putting a tiny little bit on top of your drink, so it's a nice, welcome addition to the cream. Now we're going to add in some cream and a little bit of that butterscotch sauce, just a tablespoon. So just carefully whisk this together. It'll start to loosen up in a minute. Should have used a spoon. And just get all of those lumps of that marshmallow fluff worked through the cream. We'll set that aside and get started on the actual drink. By making the kids version. So we're going to put our milk into our pot with our brown sugar. Turn that on to about medium heat. Just give it a little stir until the brown sugar starts to melt. While that's heating up, we can start on the adults. Now the adults uses an alcoholic ginger beer. You can use pumpkin ale if you can find it and not add the pumpkin in, and you can add a little bit of sugar to it as well. So let's get in there. Straight into the pot. This is easily enough for 2 people. So just that little bit of pumpkin in there. And again, get that to medium-high heat. And just get that pumpkin stirred in. And we're gonna add a couple of tablespoons of our butterscotch sauce because it wouldn't be butterbeer without it. Give it a stir so it dissolves and let that come up to temperature. Whatever temperature you'd like to have it at. I like it quite warm. Again, it's all your preference. Give that a few minutes to just come up and make sure all of those granules have dissolved, and then we're going to add in the heavy cream. You're just going to heat this until it comes to a temperature that's drinkable. Now that that's heating up really nicely, we're going to take some of that butterscotch, just a tablespoon in this one because you've already got that brown sugar in there, and just give that a little stir. It reminds me of going to Harry Potter World when I was younger, or even the Wizarding World here in England. What an amazing time out that was. You don't want that cream to come to a boil. So just when it starts to bubble up a little bit, we'll add in our cream soda. You can also use ginger ale here if you prefer. And that is our child-friendly butterbeer. Let's get that served up.
So why are we doing it like this? Because the pan does not pour.
There's no spout on this pan.
Wrong pan.
Let's get some of that whipped topping on the top. It's gonna start melting into it and give it that really foamy, beery top that we love. And it wouldn't be complete without a little spritz of edible gold luster dust. Let's pour up that adult's one. Smells so good. If you are a fan of caramel and butterscotch, this is just right where it's at. Look, it gives it that nice little foam on the top. Pies are ready. Here are our lovely pasties. We're gonna make a little drizzle to go over these just now while they're cooling. To a bowl, we're going to add some powdered sugar, a little bit of milk, and some of that cinnamon, ginger, and clove. And of course, a grating of my favorite nutmeg. Give that a quick stir together. These are perfectly delicious to serve as they are, and they will wrap up really nicely in a lunchbox or as a little snack on your journey on the Hogwarts Express. But I do like a little bit of this glaze on top, just adds to that little bit of sweetness. Let's try this butterbeer. That marshmallow fluff is so sweet. And then you've got that warm, delicious, sugary drink underneath. Not for the faint of heart, and definitely only 1 cup per person, but absolutely delicious. And the one I've been most looking forward to. That ginger beer is so lovely. It really adds a zing to it. And it has that, light alcoholic mist to it that J.K. Rowling describes in her books. Really, really lovely. Let's go in for one of these pasties. The pastry, because we use that cake and pastry flour, it's just so delicate. It just crumbles almost like a shortbread in your mouth. And then you've got that really smooth pumpkin-y filling. And you wouldn't even, I don't know if you even would say pumpkin at first thought, because the spices in there are so rich. It's just like a warm hug on a cold autumn day. It's so delicious. You have to make these. If you like this video and you want to see more Harry Potter recipes, leave a comment below about what you'd like to see next. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.